Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are calling in from. We'll wait just a moment as attendees move over from the waiting room. I see the participant numbers climbing. Welcome, welcome. Excellent. Thank you for getting the PowerPoint up, Colleen. Holding for just a moment as people are flooding in from the waiting room. And that looks like a good number. Let's begin. Welcome to our first webinar for the Global Meetings Industry Day. This webinar will be Advocacy in Action. My name is Marshall Bradshaw. I'm a member of the EIC staff. Before the session begins, I have some important housekeeping notes for you. First of all, this presentation is being recorded and will run approximately 1 hour, including question and answer time at the end. It will be available afterwards on the EIC YouTube channel. All attendees watching live today will receive CEs, which will appear on your account within 1 week of today. Attendees can listen to the webinar through their computers or by dialing in using the number and passcode provided by the Zoom software. We also welcome you to utilize the closed captioning function. Just click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen and you will find the link to the live subtitles. If you have questions, you don't have to wait until the end of the presentation to submit them. We encourage you to submit your questions using the question and answer panel, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. It is separate from the chat though, but feel free to say hello in the chat before entering your question in the Q&A panel instead. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. And that's it for my housekeeping notes. So I will hand it over to the Events Industry Council CEO, Amy Calvert.
Thank you, Marshall. Welcome, everybody, and good day. We're so very grateful that you've made time to join us, and really grateful to this amazing group of panelists that are here with us this morning for our kickoff session for our Road to Global Meetings Industry Day. I think it was really important for us as an organization on behalf of all of our fantastic members to create opportunities for conversation, and wanted to give ourselves as much room as we could to have these really important conversations around advocacy, supporting our workforce, sustainability, and equity. And that's really what, as an organization, EIC is all about. We support our global workforce through advocacy, advancing the industry through professional standards and recognition, and of course, research. So we have been really looking forward to this panel today, because as we start to think about, adaptations and innovations and building back stronger, I think it's really important to engage our workforce around, how do we incorporate advocacy as part of our daily ritual, really thinking about it a bit differently, and that we all have an active role to play. And through that unity can really have a much greater impact. So I want to introduce our amazing facilitator, Ana Maria Vizcacilla. I can think of no better champion and facilitator for today's conversation than Ana Maria. She's completely engaged and so positive, infectious enthusiasm for our industry and that which we do, and an amazing storyteller in her own right. Chief Visionary for Business Tourism Services, and of course, board member for EIC, as well as COCAL. And I know you're going to really enjoy her leadership and, of course, the wisdom of all these panelists here today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ana Maria. And again, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amy, for your kind introduction, and wonderfully flattered with the wonderful attendance we have. Those of you that join us today not only care for advocacy, but most importantly, you care for each one of the employees of this fantastic industry. So we couldn't be happier to kind of kick off EIC's activities this week with this important topic. Not only are you supporting the industry, also learning on how you can pass on the message of the importance of our industry. And when we speak of advocacy, we often look at ways of portraying actions that speak in favor or recommend or support or defend a cause. And I think our industry is much more than a cause. We have a wonderful opportunity to continue moving forward, and that's the topic for today. How are others doing it, and how can we learn from those experiences and bring it to our communities. I have the pleasure of introducing a wonderful group of industry leaders who are giving voluntarily their time at early in the morning, afternoon, or late in the evenings in their neck of the woods. And we really appreciate your wisdom and your openness to share it with all of us today. So I would like to make some introductions of our panels today, or panelists, I'm sorry. We have with us Elizabeth Niehaus, the Executive Officer of the ILEA, International Exhibitions Logistics Association. We also have Michelle Mason, President and CEO of the Association Forum. We have with us Tom Leary from HIMSS. We also have David Odrian, the Executive Director of CISO and also the Co-President of the Exhibits and Conference Alliances. Aloysius Arlando, CEO of Cinex Holdings from Singapore and also President of SACIOS. Thank you for being available at this late hour for you in the other side of the world. And also Adam Sachs, the President of Tourism Economics. We're thrilled to have each one of you share, again, not only your wisdom, but opportunities where all we can learn and bring it to our community. So having said that, we would like to get on with the topics. Remember to write your questions as they come to your mind, and we will try to answer them all. Adam, we're thinking of today and wanted to start the panel with an understanding of the current forecast for the industry on a global scale. And also, if you could share with us information on this with regards to the global and regional outlooks.
Thanks, Ana Maria. Happy to share a few thoughts with you. Everything I'm going to share is under this banner of planning for the recovery, which is going to come in waves and certainly varying outlooks for different parts of the world. The most defining factor right now really is the pace of vaccine rollout, and there's a tremendous amount of disparity around the world. What I'm showing you here is how long it's going to take for different countries to get to either 30% or 70% of population vaccinated. And you can see that the UK, the US, and Canada and Israel, these four countries really far ahead. France also pacing well. But note that the US and the UK on pace to get to something approximating herd immunity before the end of 2021. But then as you move to the other end of the spectrum, you see that there are a number of countries that are far, far behind. South Africa, Japan, South Korea, a number of emerging markets where at the current pace, you're not looking at getting there until 2025. Now, it's important to realize that the pace is going to change, that particularly capacity and the production of the vaccines and the rollout is going to accelerate. But it bears mentioning that right now, if you want to look at who's going to recover first, likely in the meetings and events industry, it's going to be those countries on the bottom half of your screen. Now, there are exceptions, right? A country may be successful in mitigating COVID-19 without the vaccine, but this is certainly one of the most important indicators that we're tracking. In the US, the number that I'm tracking the most frequently is actually the one that I've got boxed here, which is the percentage of the population over 65 years old that has received at least one dose of the vaccine. That stands at 75% right now. Why do I care so much about that? And why do I think we should care about that in every country around the world? Well, it's because if you look at deaths from COVID-19, well, in the US, which is indicative of globally the situation, 81% of all deaths have been among those that are age 65 and up, right? So that means that even at the current level of vaccination in the US, we've already effectively reduced deaths by 2/3 because we've focused on those most vulnerable populations. So when we think about the recovery in different parts of the world, a lot of it is going to hinge on the ability to vaccinate those that are most vulnerable. And it's why in the US we've already seen such a significant drop in deaths and hospitalizations. And even while cases have begun to rise, we've continued to see, especially deaths, continue to fall. And it really does relate to the ability to vaccinate those populations that are most vulnerable. Now, right now, the hospitality industry in general is also performing in a wide range of levels, right? So right now we see mainland China occupancy rates, hotel occupancy rates, largely recovered off the back of domestic travel. The US also staging a strong recovery in the spring, entirely leisure and domestic. But Europe, you can see, especially with renewed lockdowns in parts of the region, occupancies continuing to lag. Now, overall, within that, group is the most hard hit, right? Group room demand in the US for January through the end of March is down about 80%. And this is the dynamic that we're seeing around the world. Whatever demand there is in hotels, the vast majority of it is leisure related and not events related. And so events are going to be the kind of the next wave after leisure. Now, let me just share a few thoughts on the economy, and then I'll pass it back to Anna Maria. One of the key drivers of economic growth moving through this year and into next year is going to be fiscal and monetary policy. And we're seeing this out of the European Central Bank, out of central banks around the world. Significant fiscal stimulus, as well as very accommodative monetary policy in the form of low interest rates. In the US alone, fiscal stimulus has amounted to 25% of GDP since this crisis began. That's about double what was passed during the great financial crisis, for point of reference, which is those blue steps. And of course, interest rates are fueling economic growth, reducing the cost of lending. And that is a global dynamic that we're seeing that's going to help to fuel economic activity moving forward. Another big factor for the global economy is cash savings. Households have saved a tremendous amount of money over the past years. They've held back on spending. And you can see different countries that I've listed here. This is accumulated savings in 2020 alone as a share of GDP. You can see Australia, Canada, and the US each have saved massive amounts of cash, but it's true through Europe and parts of Asia as well. And that is money that is lying in wait that's going to help fuel an economic surge as things continue to open up, as we expect, as we move through 2021. Now, quickly hitting different parts of the world, let me just highlight that Asia Pacific is going to resume its place as the leader of economic growth in the world. In 2021, we expect Asia Pacific GDP to grow 7.2%. That compares to the global growth of about 6%. Right? And will continue, although things will slow after the big rebound in 2021, Asia Pacific is going to lead economic growth. Now, Europe, we see things beginning to get traction in the second half of the year. The main point I want to make to you about Europe is there are a number of potential scenarios for Europe right now that could be affected by the rate of the vaccine rollout, most primarily. But even said that, the outlook looks better than it did in the wake of the great financial crisis of 2008. And so in that sense, we see the European economy in a better position for growth than it was about a decade ago. Moving to Latin America, I have less positive news in Latin America. In fact, if you look at what I've circled here, it's where GDP will be in 2021 relative to 2019. And you can see that in all countries, 2021 will still be below 2019. And we see continued weakness in Argentina, very slow recovery out of Brazil, certainly as it struggles with a very acute situation with COVID-19. But globally, here's the main point. We do expect a rapid acceleration as we move to the latter part of this year. Nevertheless, the global economy is going to remain below what it would have otherwise been. There's going to be healing that remains to happen in the outer years of the outlook. And so this leads to the final question: when will the events sector recover? I probably won't offer a definitive view of that, but I'll share a couple of thoughts on this. The first is based on the forecast we just completed for the US, and I think that this can be instructive for the global view as well. 2021 doesn't look a whole lot different than 2020. Now, the recovery is likely to gain traction in the second half of the year. So a lot of that demand on the event side is going to be the second half of the year. But it's not until 2022 where we see the events industry really begin to gather itself and gain momentum, getting to 82% of 2019 levels, and then nearly recovered in its entirety by 2024 in terms of room demand associated with the events industry. One of the things to bear in mind is the events industry does tend to concentrate in September and October. These are the peak months. And so a lot is riding on how quickly can we get to a place where decisions can be made about events to move forward in these important fall months. But let me give you just a couple of final thoughts of encouragement. During SARS, a lot of us wondered, how long will it take for confidence to be restored? It seemed like it might take a very, very long time because those were very scary days. Yet what we saw is that within 14 to 17 months, international travel had completely recovered to the countries most affected once the crisis itself was resolved. And so it is not surprising to me that we're already seeing a remarkable spike in intentions to travel. This is a survey of US travelers, but I think it captures the psychology of the moment, which is that as things have begun to improve and as the outlook has begun to improve with vaccinations, you can see the huge jump, 20 percentage points, just over the last month and a half, an increase in the appetite for travel. And I would say that there have been various viewpoints that have been shared that the events industry may not fully recover, that people have learned to do without. We would strongly contest that viewpoint. In fact, what we're seeing more in the survey data is incredible amounts of pent-up demand, and the appreciation for in-person meetings has in fact never been higher. There's only so many Zoom meetings we can take, and so there's an eagerness to meet. And so when someone tells you that the events industry is not going to fully recover, you can at least tell them that the tourism economics and Oxford economics disagree strongly with that premise.
Thank you so much, Adam, and allowing us to actually quote you in the fact that, yes, we are all longing for the moment that we can meet face to face. Nothing can replace the ability of connection and knowledge sharing when we meet face to face. And thank you for your words of encouragement, and really like the connection you made between vaccination and the appetite to meet. So I really like that. Thank you for your presentation. And now Singapore is doing wonderful things in terms of roadmaps to recovery. And Aloysius, we know there has been some developments in terms of forward-looking plan that was led by SACIOS and with other industry partners. And actually it's called the Industry Resilience Roadmap. I really love resilience within that framework. And it's an excellent example of collaboration in the industry and for the industry. Can you please share with us a little bit more in detail how this wonderful roadmap and this combination of industry leaders is supporting the industry's workforce in Singapore, as well as the advocacy efforts?
Thank you, Anna Maria, and good morning to my colleagues over in the US, and good afternoon to those from Europe. A pleasure to join you today, and thank you, Adam, for giving a great expose. And there's a lot of hope for us to look forward to. I build upon from what Adam has shared, and particularly from the SARS episode. Can I have the slide, please? And during SARS, we've learned a lot. We needed to have our drawer plans ready for any crisis, any pandemic situation, and it somewhat proved useful for the crisis we are in today, but not that much. And let me tell you why, and how we as an association had to rally once again, really to break down our own internal borders, our internal silos, in order to come together as one coherent voice in order to get ourselves out of this situation and hopefully through a phase of recovery sooner rather than later. SASIOS is the National Association for the Singapore MICE. We call it MICE, which is the Meetings, Incentives, Convention, Exhibitions, and Events Industry. And our mandate is really to look at building and working with the government agencies as well as adjacent associations to strengthen the ecosystem that supports our events industry. Next slide, please. When COVID hit, this was towards the end of January, and this is where we saw the early signs that something was not going quite right, especially from what we are seeing coming out of China. Having said that, we knew that it's going to spread pretty fast around the world. And we took out our drawer plans, which is during SARS, and really brought together the industry to prepare what could be at the time, perhaps the duration of what we went through to SARS. And of course, we are proven wrong as we are now 1 year later, still going through the battle. We did know that it's important for us to rally the industry in order for us to survive, because we do not know the extent and of the impact of COVID. And secondly, we knew that recovery would certainly follow. So we also needed to think about, regardless of the extent of impact, how are we going to thrive once again in a post-pandemic world? So these were very valuable lessons that we pick up from SARS, but it really stretches to the limits. And I want to take us through to the journey of our engagement. Until now, it took us close to about a year, and we went through different cycles. And I think one of the key things for us is to make sure that communications continue to be ever present and using two different omni-channels in order to make sure that we reach out to the different parties in the industry. And in many of our industry, it's made up of small and medium enterprises, and including startups and also sole proprietorships. And therefore, it's important to recognize that we are all at different levels of understanding, as well as the wherewithal to support ourselves in this journey. And if, of course, the timeline gets stretched, you can imagine the impact on cash flows. And that was what happened not only to us, I guess, to many enterprises around the world. So when we went through these phases, we went through what is known as a prep mode or preparation mode, looking at what are the precautionary measures, what are the new or revised protocols we have to put in place, and in order for us to continue staging business events. But that was really short-lived because what happened was on 3rd of March, when WHO declared a pandemic, we shifted gears, and immediately you can imagine travel and border restrictions came into place, and the events industry just was decimated. So we needed to shift gears pretty fast into how best can we support the industry. Like many others in different parts of the world, we were caught high and dry, and I think many of the SMEs were grappling with how long can they survive. So what we went through as an association is to work very closely with the government authorities to see, can there be any financial support to tide the small players through this session, and also what could be looked upon in terms of alternatives to bring about a staged recovery. So already while the pandemic was getting into momentum, we were already planning for the recovery stage. And that's where we seeded that we recognize that the impact is going to be far and wide. It is evolving, it is uncertain, because it is a novel coronavirus. Even the scientists and doctors are trying to grapple what sort of vaccination or what sort of medical responses have to be introduced. And these were the early days between February to June, and many cities went into lockdown mode, including Singapore. And we saw that many other parts of the world, while they were locked down, they did not go through it thoroughly, and that led to a spike of a second and third waves, which we saw in the June to December period. And that certainly brought continued concern, because is going to be longer than expected. So the engagement continues to see how best can we rally the team in order to ensure that we strengthen not just the enterprises, but also the workforce. What are some of the skill sets that we need to put in place in order for us to battle the pandemic and shift to alternative models, the beginnings of the hybrid models, as we would put it. And clearly, as there was no revenue dollar coming in, how do we sustain ourselves? And when recovery starts, what would the economics look like? Next slide, please. So we went into a flurry of activities, and I'm going to go through this quite fast. We went to discussions right to the top. Next slide, please. Met up with my prime minister. Is over there in a grey jacket with the ministers. We basically were thick-skinned to rally the different agencies to come together and to really express and underscore the worth of our industry, the number of jobs it created. I think you know the numbers in your respective economies, but we have to keep drumming home the message. And it's important because all these enterprises depend on ensuring that the flow of events continues to thrive. Next, please. We also looked further afield to the different global associations. What can we learn? How can we also incorporate some of the best lessons, best case studies that are going to place so that we're able to put in place through the collective learning some of these efforts in order to sustain and therefore restart the industry. Next slide, please. So we also work with the unions, and the unions were very important for us and the workforce because we needed to band together. It's not just for enterprises, but also the workers in order to look at what does it take for us to rebuild and build up new capabilities to be resilient that will make the industry perhaps spring back as soon as it's possible. Next slide, please. So as a result, this led to the development of what is called the Industry Resilience Roadmap. From the one voice that we've marshaled all the industry associations, the adjacent associations of enterprises, to speaking to the agencies, in this case, the Tourism Board and the Enterprise Singapore, which are agencies dedicated to both business events as well as enterprise development, as well as the workforce. So we knew it has to be a coordinated effort. It is not just about one industry, but we have to make attempts and make strong efforts to bring this about. There were 5 different areas in this industry resilience roadmap, and it focuses on what are some of the safe business events practices that have to be put in place, what could be the playbook for hybrid events, what are some of the business models that we are seeing emerging because of this pandemic, what are growth drivers going to look like, revenue drivers going to look like for the digital space, what are the new capabilities and skill sets that are necessary to be resilient or future event or even hybrid ready. And lastly, how do we continue the conversations with the various communities that are related to the events industry? Next slide, please. At the same time, I spoke about getting some funding support. So all the ongoing advocacy efforts led to customizing some of these, what we call the national budgets, and specific initiatives to help the different sectors of our industry, essentially to ensure that they manage our cash flow, credit lines, looking at how to keep the workers employed, and lastly, what are some of the transformation considerations that they have to put in place. Next slide, please. So this then led to the whole July to December, and in this period, after the lockdown, we began our 3-phase opening. Phase 1 started off in June and ended off in August, and then phase 2 and phase 3. Next slide, please. So in this effort, when the economy was beginning to reopen, we shifted gears again to look at various efforts to help restart or recover the industry. And we looked at focus groups to embark on what is known as pilot events and the application of healthcare protocols. This was necessary because the roadmap is just a roadmap. It has to be operationalized, and it has to also look at policy tweaks or innovations that have to be put in place at the same time with actions that are undertaken by the enterprises. At the same time, we also worked on the larger tourism recovery because for Singapore and for countries or economies that rely heavily on international travel, it's important for us to think about how do we forge partnerships with various global bodies, as well as aviation industry, in order to restart the aviation sector. So as we embark on the rebound, our journey was very focused. It's about where we had zero revenue to go into a pilot phase and hopefully to a profitable phase and the recovery process, which will take us towards late 2021 and even 2022. Next slide, please. And so in terms of testing pilots, we've created with various organizers how to conduct a hybrid event. And this is not easy because as we can see, we are all in different time zones. There are different personas. We have to make sure there's on-demand broadcast. Immediately, what we have envisioned in the resilience roadmap of developing skill sets came into a good practice. This led to developing broadcast skills, storytelling on, if I can put it, Netflix version of the event. And I think that is what the whole industry attempted to pivot. So this pivoting strategy was super crucial. What will this happen in a recovery stage? Certainly, it's going to be from what is seemed to be a mainstay to something that's perhaps going to be an enhancement, but it's certainly not going to go away as we have seen behaviors changing, consumer expectations are changing, they're getting more demanding, and I think the whole notion of on-demand content consumption is going to take center stage and becoming a cornerstone in our business moving forward. Next slide, please. And therefore, we also focus under the resilience roadmap, how do we skill up our industry? So we work with universities, we work with various academies to create bite-sized modules in the area of whether it's broadcasting, storytelling, graphics, animation, so that it enables the workforce as well as others who are joining the industry to pick up these skills quickly, because this is all about making sure that we've got the hybrid skill sets ready for global business events to return. Next slide, please. But what's key overall in our journey for the industry resilience roadmap is indeed collaboration. In the crisis, the disease does not respect borders, associations, size of companies, whoever you are. It is so crucial for us to then really step out of our comfort zone, reach out to, first of all, national and then global bodies, because we're all in the same boat. And that's what we've learned a lot. And it's something which is very easily transferable. Many of the initiatives and skills sets that we came about can be easily shared, and we'd be more than happy to share them. Because how it is being practiced and operationalized in the different economies will vary. And I think, but some of these key tools are going to be quite common, particularly in a post-COVID marketplace. Next slide, please. What's next? Next slide, please. And it's all about the uneven vaccine rollout. I think that's what Adam spoke about. And we are seeing that. And what we need to think about is how do we then review protocols that are necessary to ensure that we cater for different brands of vaccine. I mentioned in an earlier session that the rise of vaccine nationalism is going to come. And this is, in other words, China, for example, is recognizing only Sinopharm or Sinovac vaccination. For those who do not have that, you are not allowed to go into China, and therefore your digital certs do not play. Now, there'll be many of this situation, and we also do not know how the vaccine, the efficacy of the vaccine is going to be. This is not the panacea. It just mitigates the impact that you have. And therefore, it's important for us to think about how do we ensure that there is a continual rollout of these vaccinations? How do we ensure antibodies are still in our system? And how does it facilitate travel, especially for those who are vaccinated? So we see there are going to be a rise, a development of protocols that are for vaccinated populations and non-vaccinated populations. As you can imagine, it's what Adam had shared earlier. It's going to take years for the whole world to be at least inoculated. So we hope that by sharing, it gives you some key insights to how the journey continues. Next slide, please. And that the association will continue to work closely with the industry, and we still have to keep that one voice to ensure that we can get out of the woods. We are still in a very uneven and an evolving situation, but I think through collaborative efforts, we should be able to emerge stronger from this episode. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Aloysius. One voice, making sure that the industry keeps the role and really play around the cross sectors, important pivotal points in your recuperation. Thank you so very much. Moving right along, we want to make sure we run into the perfect timing for this session. Elizabeth, in your role with Ayala, you have a great vantage point into advocacy efforts in different regions of the world. What are some of the success stories that you could share with us today? And more generally, are there specific factors that have improved outcomes for these initiatives?
So thank you first. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Adam, for your encouraging forecast, and thank you, Singapore, Sasios, and Aloysius for your leadership. It's amazing what you guys are doing. So then coming back to the question, we are a very small association. We are 170 members and we are an international association. So how was our experience? How was our experience, the last 12 months experience in advocacy action? I can say that the number one vantage was that we have been able to build a united front and to have an amplified voice. So even we, as a very, very small association, as a truly international one, we have experienced how it was just to work in 56 national projects. We have been working with mostly all of the countries where our members are based. And this has been an incredible, rewarding, empowering, and corporations that have had an incredible leverage transformation touch. So what we, for example, experience that working, the advocacy work that we have done, for example, in Italy, or the advocacy work that we have done in Mexico, or the advocacy work that we could do in other countries, was unique because all associations, all stakeholders, they were working together. And these had a transformational impact, not only for the work that we have been doing, but also for our industries and for our members itself. So that we understood the role that we are playing for every vertical business industry ecosystem, which responsibilities we have. And this because our customers understood the role that our events and exhibitions are playing for them. So, and also just to understand the gap that is coming out of these almost 14 months of closeness. So I think if you ask me, advocacy in action, the vantage, definitely the united front and the amplified voice. And for example, if we see what Sasios is doing in Singapore, this is really paramount. The leadership that Sasios is playing in the event exhibition industry, it's almost unique. And I think these are the next steps. This is what we need to focus in order just to building back stronger, just to work on roadmaps that help us just to build back stronger for our ecosystems, for all the ecosystems that we are actually propelling and supporting. So I just wanted to share with you another experience, how it was for a very small association, being truly international and having the challenge just to do advocacy work on the dot. So how a small association can do that. And I would like to share with you the experience that we had in Europe with the European Exhibition Industry Alliance, with UFI, and with plenty of other associations coming from the event and exhibition industry, representing every single, let's say, part of the value chain. And in an environment that is difficult, like the European Union, where you have so many, let's say, national countries that they have their own advocacy environment. So, and in a general environment where it is difficult just to win actually consensus, because it's so difficult in such a, every single member of the European Union is saying, okay, just go to your national country and just to try to, let's say, reach the governments in order just to move forwards. And I think the experience of what we gain with the European Exhibition Industry Alliance, UFI, and all the other associations was unique. And these are the key success factors that I wanted to share with you guys. So if I want to talk about the key success factors, I would say the quick and cooperative workflow to get alerts on decide on positions inside our industries and complex situations on EU, on a national level that we need to address. This was key, just to really have quick and cooperative workflows. Then, for example, that our advocacy on the EU was built on reputation. So advocacy is a long path. So, and this is, I think we have to keep on working on this because, we could reach so much because of the reputation that we built over the past years. Then another element for the success story was to align messages and communication. That was key in order just to reach anything on the EU and national level. The next one, to find partners, allies, to argue for a cause, just to have one main message to share with just to represent the industry. And particularly in our industry, we have been very successful with Together Strong, the initiative that we launched in March 2020. And last but not least, we learned to be patient. We learned to explain over and over and over again about the role of events and exhibitions. And we learn just to be impactful. We learn just to address our role so that let's say the decision makers and our, let's say, advocacy targets, that they understand why it is important just to reopen and to build back stronger via events and exhibitions. So when we think, I think about our work, about events and exhibitions, about the, let's say, the roles that we play for our ecosystems, I think the mission so far is accomplished. I think first we understood our customers, our, let's say, event participants, our exhibitors, they understood the role of our industry. And the governments are getting to that point. In some countries, like in Singapore, they are on the same boat, working together on a roadmap out of the crisis. In other countries, like our country, Santa Maria in Latin America, because I'm Argentinian, it will take a little bit longer.
Oh,
so
yes.
This is why learning and just showing best practices, like for example, Singapore is doing, that will be our open sesame. So thank you, Aloysius, and thank you, Sasios. So, and I think, the governments, we will get to that point.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. Important for the to continue collaborating. And on that note, not only do you have the support of the Event Industry Council, but we want to make sure that we're part of those roadmaps that are being developed with your association. Moving right along, because awareness is of key importance to what we do, and we're also keeping the watch here. David, recently with the formation of the Exhibits and Conference Alliance, that is now the home of the Exhibit Mean Business and Go Live Together group, what do you envision as a long-term role for this new alliance in respects to driving awareness about the importance of the exhibition sector that is so crucial to so many economies?
Hi, thank you, Anna Maria. The Exhibitions and Conferences Alliance was formed just at the end of last year after the work of the Go Live Together coalition, advocacy coalition, was started in the spring of last year in response to the COVID pandemic. This alliance encompasses basically all sides of the exhibitions industry, exhibitions and conferences industry in the US. You can see at ecalliance.us, the partners include the CVBs through Destinations International, the EACA, the exhibit appointed contractors, the EDPA, the exhibit designers and producers, ESCA representing the service contractors, IAE and SEER representing the broad industry, IAVM representing the venue managers, and CISO, my own organization, representing the for-profit show organizers. Even though many of the groups like CISO and IE are international membership based, the US market is obviously the largest sector, largest global regional market in the industry. And so having a focused advocacy group serving that market was essential. The advocacy work was started late, no doubt about it. The Go Live Together initiative was first started as an umbrella to bring together these sectors of the industry to focus on the US crisis in April of last year, as we said. And this is, of course, something, advocacy work is a long-term investment. Go Live Together was seen initially to be a short-term effort. We all thought that this would be a short-term issue, frankly, a year ago. We've all seen the error in that perception as it's gone further on. We had to raise funds urgently and quickly. We raised over $500,000 last spring to fund the efforts, the advocacy work of Go Live Together. That was started by CISO, frankly, putting up through the support of the largest show organizers in the US, over $250,000 to support the effort, and the other organizations coming on board as well. By the fall of last year, we realized that this was not going to be a short-term effort and also needed a permanent advocacy group representing the industry in the United States. And so the decision was made to form the Exhibitions and Conferences Alliance as a permanent advocacy umbrella group serving the US industry. That funding is now also looking, we've also got commitments of over $500,000 a year to support that effort from the organizations. And again, the largest organizers through CISO have provided half that funding again going forward. And David Dubois, the head of IAE, and myself have agreed to take on the role of co-presidents as to help run the organization. But more importantly, we've also hired a full-time, very experienced, tenured head of government affairs. Tommy Goodwin joined ECA back in February and is leading our advocacy efforts in the United States, as well as using the lobbying firms and PR firms and the like that we have on retainer, helping us with those efforts. You can go to the website, and we're very short of time, so I'm not going to go into all of the issues that we're working on still. But if you go to ecalliance.us or you go to the golivettogether.org websites, there's a lot of materials there available.
Thank you so very much, and very important to continue to create awareness for the exhibit industry that is such important. Michelle, the power of associations. Could you share with us how associations are supporting advocacy efforts related to the event sector?
Sure. Thank you so much, Anne Marie, for having me, and thank you, EIC. I think that Alicius and Elizabeth have really helped us to understand the power of associations and have provided very clear examples of what it means for an association to activate, to clearly deliver a message, to partner, and to collaborate. And I think that David and the work that he's doing is it shows that collaboration and effort in action as well. So I can't provide a better example than that. But I will say that it's very important for us to be able to clearly articulate our stories, tell our stories, develop deeper relationships with elected officials, not when we have a crisis, but it should be ongoing, and be able to measure our impact. Adam provided us with very clear hope, right, on when we will recover. So we need to align our strategies along with the events industry predictions as it relates to recovery, and continue to partner wherever we can and however we can, and also tell the stories of these best practice examples. And lastly, because I know Tom is definitely going to provide an example from him, but lastly, I'll share that we need to have a seat at the table with all of these collaborations and alliances and coalitions. So for example, Association Forum is a member of U.S. Travel, Meaning Means Business, EIC, ASAE. We're very involved with Destinations International because we really need to understand the issues that are being addressed and be able to articulate them and mobilize our members to respond at the appropriate time. So the power of associations is very clear. In the how, we have some really great examples that have been shared today.
Thank you, Michelle. Associations are as important to the events industry as the event industry is important to associations. Dear Tom, as the examples that Michelle just presented, your organization, HIMSS, has been actively supporting advocacy efforts for events. Could you share some of the initiatives that have been put into action, and also how associations can support that advocacy, and why is this so valuable for the success of associations towards the future?
Thank you, Anna Maria, and thank you to all of the panelists in EIC. This has been a great education for me. You know, to be quite frank about the issue, you know, March 2nd of last year, we were at noon. We were announcing the President of the United States, the first sitting president, to speak at our conference, and by noon on March the 5th, we were canceling a conference that was going to be bringing in 40-some thousand people from 82 countries. So our team of government relations professionals and our advocates that we've built over the last 15 years, who have been largely focused on, focused on realizing the full health potential of every human everywhere, had to shift our understanding to not just the mission of the organization, but actually the responsibilities of making sure that we still had an association, that the membership, would then need to get involved in a different type of advocacy work. So we quickly got our public policy committee involved and began focusing on a couple of key areas that have been mentioned so far today. As a U.S.-based organization, we're focused on the Paycheck Protection Program, and the fact that organizations like ours were not included. So we got involved in the ASAE conversation, the Go Live Together efforts, all of the things that have been mentioned here so far. But I think it's key for associations to understand is that you don't just, you have to remember that you are an association and you have to keep your doors open, you have to keep your lights on. So just not just focusing on your mission, but also the idea of being an organization that continues to serve its membership. So we've been involved in working on congressional activities with respect to pandemic risk insurance. HIMSS was had the forethought, both the former and current leadership, as well as the board of directors, had the forethought to have communicable disease insurance. That is not available in the marketplace at this point. So we're working with other organizations, large and small, to try and have some level of pandemic risk insurance available. And that's an ongoing discussion. And how do organizations do that? We've gotten our members involved in letter writing campaigns, digital letter writing at this point, through there's many formats out there, but we use the Quorum format. We've gotten involved in Zoom-based or virtual meetings with congressional staffers and who we had never interacted with because we focused on healthcare, not on tax issues, et cetera. So it's those types of resources that you normally do in your day-to-day on your topic of your association. You then have to be able to expand to membership involvement, letter writing, Zoom-based meetings, really advocating and getting involved in various associations that have been or activities that have been highlighted in this conversation. So going from cancellation of a conference to how do we make sure that that this our next live event, which we're expecting for August 9th through 13th of this year, is conversations with the local public health department, the county public health department in Las Vegas, Nevada, here in the U.S., and then of course the state and federal governments, but also being as a global organization, in Aloysius' point of having to pay close attention to what's happening in other countries with vaccine credentialing and how do you prove that, so all of that is really the types of issues that we've gotten involved in, gotten our members engaged and really and worked very closely with Go Live and the other organizations that have been identified. But it's going from it was a do your day job, but also begin to expand your horizon. What has made it successful for us.
Wonderful, and thank you for sharing the expanding the horizons, but then reach out and connect more dots and support each other. Thank you so much, Tom. In order to make sure that we respond to everything we needed to do today, for those colleagues that have shared with us your questions, since you register, we will be happy to pass on the answers of the questions. Our panelists have been gracious to make sure we get to answer your questions, and you're gonna get them in writing. Thank you so very much for all our distinguished panelists. Remember that all the information is being kept, and you can review it and review it and review it as much as you want, so it helps you. And also a wonderful audience and the exchanges in the chat room. Now I pass it on to Amy Calvert. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Wonderful job as our moderator today. And thank you to all of our panelists and to our participants. I thought it was a really, really rich conversation. And this is just a slide to remind you that we have a number of conversations happening this week, and this is open to anyone. All industry professionals are welcome to join. One of the things that really I am really keen to continue to talk about, and I love the way Aloysius positions this, and thriving, how can we thrive in this post-pandemic world? And if you look at Adam's statistics and all of the indicators, there's so much opportunity for us to really harness the power of the things that we've learned over this past 12 months, not only about advocacy, but the things that really matter and the true purpose of our industry, and not only the economic impact, but that rich catalytic impact of events. If we are the industry globally that facilitates and fosters human connections, we have a tremendous opportunity at hand to really focus our efforts in coming back stronger. And part of that is understanding, our ecosystem and our impact. And so EIC, and continuing a tradition of really being an organization on behalf of its members and its stakeholder partners that focuses on research, is commissioning the next iteration of our economic significance study in partnership with Adam and the fantastic team at Oxford Economics. And there'll be 4 streams of insights coming out of this research that will really help us tell our best story, right? We'll understand what the high water marks were in 19 to be able to articulate that in comparison to 2020, and then be able to look forward and think about what are the trends telling us about what we can expect in the near term and as we come out of this. And again, really then honing in on that catalytic impact so that we can take the data and then use it in our storytelling and be able to use it at the local level to draw a picture and humanize the story about why events matter, why what we do matters, and how we each can play a role in that storytelling. So again, I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing, for the spirit of unity in which you've approached this entire past 12 months. And I want to encourage all the participants here today to really feel empowered and to really feel inspired about that which is ahead of us. And the fact that when we are together and we are committed on this journey, the impact that we can have will be so much greater and so much more meaningful. So again, thank you for joining us. Look forward to continued conversations, not only this week, but in the future. And please stay in touch.
Great, thank you for that, Amy. That concludes today's webinar. On behalf of the Events Industry Council, I'd like to thank all of our panelists again. And for live attendees, EIC will be sending you your CE within 1 week. This webinar will be available for playback on the EIC YouTube channel as well. And if you missed EIC Advanced last year, you can now access its content on demand through our EIC collections, which will be starting on April 8th, this Thursday. This webinar will now end. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Marshall. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Good luck today. Let's just enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, Abida, for staying up late with us as always.
Bye.
So appreciate it.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Anna Maria. Take
Yeah.
care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Tom.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Tom.
Bye-bye. Thank you.